Today I'm with Professor Michael Chu. He is the Senior Lecturer of Business Administration. Professor Michael Chu was appointed a Senior Lecturer in the General Management Group of the Harvard Business School in July 2003, where he is part of the Social Enterprise Initiative. Professor Chu also teaches the second-year elective business at the base of the pyramid, a course introduced jointly with Professor V. Kasturi Rangan. And also he has a long of CV. Thank you so much, Professor Michael Chu, for the time today.
Welcome to Dr. Sonia Wibisono YouTube channel. Jangan lupa klik subscribe, karena subscribe itu gratis. Klik like, klik share agar teman-teman bisa dengar juga manfaatnya. Klik lonceng, gambar lonceng, silahkan komentar sebanyak-banyaknya.
So can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and what's your hobby and what you do every day?
Right. Well, I'm of 250 faculty members at Harvard Business School. There's about 45 of us that are drawn from practice.
Okay.
So I'm really old graduate of the school, and I'm a business person.
Okay.
And I continue being half a business person and half a professor at Harvard Business School. And really, I was born in China, but grew up in Uruguay in South America.
Uruguay, okay.
And what I like to do now that I'm getting older,
No, you still look young.
I like to sail.
Oh wow! And now in Boston, they have a lot of sail yachts, yeah.
Yes, and the North Shore is particularly where I like to sail.
Yeah. Okay, so what bring your interest in the focus of business serving low-income population in emerging markets? Why do you like to focus on that area?
Well, I was doing business. I was in leverage buyouts in Wall Street, and while I was doing that, I was asked to be on the board of an organization called Action International.
Okay.
Action has pioneered microfinance around the world, particularly starting in Latin America. And microfinance is financial services for the poor, low-income people, for the majority of our countries, and the majority
in Indonesia,
of the world.
also a lot of microfinancing nowadays. They are booming now.
Indonesia has one of the great microfinance institutions of the world, Bank Rakyat of Indonesia.
Yes.
And so I got involved with microfinance, first from the board of directors perspective. But while I was doing that, these organizations that Action had created in Latin America became profitable. So that, for me, was a very important breakthrough, because it said that an activity that is aimed at helping people realize the potential of their lives could actually be a business.
Profitable. Yeah.
And because it's profitable, it can then reach large scale. And that was very, very important, because most humanitarian effort depends on philanthropy.
Okay.
So the more successful something backed by philanthropy is, the closer it gets to its limit, because it always is depending on donations.
Yes.
But if it's a business and it crosses break-even, then scale becomes your friend.
Okay.
And if scale becomes your friend, then you're trying to serve 4 billion of the 7.5 billion people in the world.
Yes.
There is a hope to reach everybody that needs it.
Yeah, because Indonesia is like with the highest percentage of the low-income people also from all over the world. Like you said, like 70% of Indonesian people are from the lower income. So do you think we should do this microfinance as a scalable business in Indonesia?
Well, Indonesia has already done it. Bank Rakyat of Indonesia is one of the great institutions of microfinance in the world.
Okay.
And so in a sense, Indonesia has also pioneered microfinance.
Yes.
The world does not know that.
Okay.
But actually, Indonesia, and for me doing microfinance around the world, has always been an inspiration, led by Bank Rakyat of Indonesia.
BRI, yeah.
Yes.
Besides microfinance, what else can we do, the philanthropist business that can be scalable and improve the economics of the low-income people?
Well, I think, when you think of Indonesia, and most of Indonesia is characterized by low-income people, in order to fulfill the potential of their lives, need all the key things.
Yes.
Access to healthcare, access to education, access to a good roof, access to nutrition, and today, access to the internet. The way that they get access to it, unfortunately, in my view, the government has many, many challenges.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It has so many challenges for many, many reasons that when it provides goods and services like education, it's or healthcare, even when it's free, right? Low-income people have to wait a long time. If you and I wait 4 hours to see a doctor,
Yes,
nothing happens to our income. But if somebody poor waits 4 or 5 hours, they've lost a day's income.
Yes.
And so, for me, one of the lessons that I learned from microfinance is that if you can mount interventions that are important for people's lives, like education, healthcare, and so on commercial platforms, then and you make it accessible to the cash flow of the people, then you have the chance of massifying that reach.
Commercial platform. Can
Yes.
you please explain a little bit about that?
So, for example, microfinance, and certainly Bank Rakyat of Indonesia is an example,
Yes.
the microfinance operations are very commercially viable. They're profitable. It is one of the reasons that contributes to the net income
Yes.
of the bank.
Yes.
And there are many examples around the world in which there are business models that serve low-income people in important interventions that are also profitable. So, for example, in Mexico, like most Latin American countries, the Constitution guarantees every citizen access to healthcare. That means access to doctor, access to medicine. How that turns out in reality is a poor person that has a pain on the side goes and first has to establish an appointment. Then they come back maybe 2-3 weeks later and wait 4-6 hours to see a doctor. By now they've lost 2 days' income.
Yes.
And then the doctor says, good news, you don't have to worry. Here is the medicine that you have to take. It's for free in the pharmacy by the public clinic. But studies show that 82% of the time that pharmacy is out of stock. So the poor person has to buy medicine like anybody else in a pharmacy. So as a response to that, a business was created by an entrepreneur that basically has medicine that is at least 30% cheaper than in regular pharmacy, sometimes 75% cheaper. And it's side by side with a clinic with a doctor that can see people for $2 a visit. And this has been a very, very successful business. It's called Farmacias Similares. Today, it's $1 billion revenue company. It covers every a city in Mexico, and it serves 12 million people a month, and 3.5 million people a month see their doctor at that clinic next door to the pharmacy.
But it's not insurance.
No, it is fee for treatment.
But how come the fee can be so low for the doctor?
Because it is access to primary care. It's the first contact. So what is it good for? It's good if you're a mother and your child has big earache. So you want to know, is it just a ear infection or is it something very serious?
Yes.
Or if you feel bad and you're dizzy, what is this? Is it a normal cold or is it brain tumor? So this is the first contact. So the doctor, usually you don't have to wait more than 15 minutes.
Okay.
If you have something bleeding, that's not for you.
Okay.
if they have to inject something, that's not. It is the very first contact. This is a great solution.
After that, they refer to the other specialists, or
if the doctor says, you know, I think that you need to see a specialist, that person goes back to the public health system because they're poor.
Okay.
But as you know, what this is a great response to is 80% of the interventions that are responsible for 20% of the cost.
Okay.
It's all these things that are first contact medicine. It's impossible to deal with brain tumor at $2 a visit.
Yes.
So for that, you have to go back to the public health system. But if you look at it from a society point of view, this is a great service for low-income people because they $2 is
for a doctor consultation
is much less than losing one day's income, and it's quick. And so, in terms of value proposal, it's a great value proposal for the country. It says that a public health system does not have to be clogged with people who just want that access. What happens in reality is that because access is so difficult, even though it's guaranteed by the Constitution, poor people delay and defer their visit to the doctor because it's so costly.
Yes. Too long.
It's free, but it's very costly for the poor.
Yeah. And how come it can be profitable? $2 per visit for the company?
Because that $2 is kept by the doctor. It's all for the doctor. What this model does is it sets up. There's a foundation that sets up the clinics, and what the pharmacy will do is they will clean the offices. They will keep the offices perfect. The doctor just has to come and be there.
So it is going to be like a short visit for every patient.
Exactly, because it's designed to be
fast,
first contact primary healthcare.
Okay.
So the doctor, it's like for low income, it's access to a doctor, like a family doctor, like a primary doctor.
But will the doctor check them everything? I mean, like the anamnesis, and then also anamnesis, like asking questions, and also like checking them with the stethoscope.
Well, usually it will be to deal with a specific problem, but through time, and if it's in your neighborhood, the doctor begins to know you and your family, and so it's not like a regular check. People don't go there to say, I'm here for my regular physical checkup. They go for treatment. They say, I've got a sore throat, or something here hurts, or my child got something in the eyes, and the doctor says, look, it's conjunctivitis. This is the medicine that you need. And of course, the medicine is prescribed as a generic. So they can fill in any pharmacy. But for that pharmacy, because it's right next door, and it has a much cheaper generic medicine, usually the person will go and fill the prescription there.
Oh, that's a very great philanthropist and business model that can profitable also.
Well, for me, that's interesting. Is that this is a really strong business model. Why is it strong? Because it provides a very great value proposal for the low-income people. And so there's so many people that access their first contact doctor through this. And then for me, it has big social impact.
That is from the medical side. How about the education side? Do you have any example that kind of business that have a big social impact and also?
Well, access to education, of course, is one of the key things if you want to live closer to the potential of your life.
Yes.
And public education has been the response for low-income people. But in many, many parts of the world, public education is not delivering a high-quality product. And so around the world, there have emerged private schools focusing on the low-income people. And so, for example, in Hyderabad, in India, 50% of the children that are living in the poor districts of the city attend private schools. Now, these are not private schools like you and I think of private schools.
Yes.
But I visited them. They are the school children are in school uniforms. They are in classrooms that are very, very poor. Some are very dark because it's one room after another, and there is only one window. So the first class may have a good light, but the second class has less light, and so on. So the conditions are difficult, but the instructions in those schools is in English. The children are very attentive, and the model is one in which what is being charged from our perspective is very little. But something very interesting happens. When parents pay, they can demand results.
Yes, yes.
So as one headmistress of a school that I talked to in Hyderabad, she says, I talk to parents that don't know English. They very likely don't know even how to read and write.
Yes.
But on Saturday mornings, I meet with parents. And she told me, a mother came in and said, my son is in your school, but his English seems not as good as the children of my neighbors who go to another school. So what are you going to do about that? She says, this mother, she doesn't know English, but she listens, and it seems to her that the neighbor's son speaks better English, so she's coming to demand results. And that is really interesting because, of course, India has a public school system.
Yes.
But public school system, if you look at the degrees of the professors, they're much better prepared in the public school than in these private schools. But the results in national examinations is better from the private schools.
Okay.
But the public school has high absenteeism. There is no accountability. And yet in these schools that are paid by the parents, you see better results.
Okay. So besides, and how to build a character? Because usually in low-income people, it's difficult to build characters. Because especially in my country, it's easy to persuade them to do bad things like riots and demonstration because of their low income, and sometimes they're being bribed and being paid to do some bad things, bad riots and bad demonstration. Do you have any idea how to make like a big impact in the making characters, good characters?
Well, I think this is not a problem that's concentrated on low-income people. I think the building of character is a societal problem, and it's a problem everywhere.
Yes.
Because, I think building character is very important. You can't build a nation if you don't build character.
Yes.
The failure of character you see, in my view, across the world and across socioeconomic class. Because in a country, you can see that failure among the richest and the most powerful because of things they do that are many times the reason why the society doesn't improve. And so I don't see low-income people.
Bad character, yeah.
Right.
So it's a problem for everybody.
For the society.
Yes.
So, you can look at what's happening in Europe, you can look at what's happening in the United States.
Yes.
And character matters. Integrity matters.
Yes.
And now we see in the US, in my view, a situation in which the lack of integrity in government is corroding everything. This is not a low-income problem. And when you see the bad results, the rise of racism, white nationalism, all these things cut across socioeconomic groups, is that the world is undergoing deep change, driven by two huge things: technology and globalization.
Yes.
Technology and globalization produce winners and losers. And a lot of attention has been focused on the winners, and we've neglected the losers. And so in the US and in Europe, today we see the result of not attending in time the losers.
For example?
So that is one of the reasons why I think there's the rise of populism. Income inequality in the United States for 3 decades has worsened tremendously. So today you have an income inequality which is similar to the 1920s. So the concentration since the last financial crisis, 95% of the new wealth created went to the top 1%. This is statistics. It's not a value judgment.
What should we do about that?
Well,
I
I think
can we help for the society?
I think we need to react as citizens, and we need because this income inequality worsened not by accident. There were specific policies that increased that polarization. It is in the hands of the citizens to then go for policies that lessen that income inequality rather than increase it.
So what can we apply in everyday life?
Well, I think one of them is, for example, this inequality that we spoke about means that if you look at even the United States, wealthy country like the United States, the way that people access goods and services, if you are in the lower 40-50% of the United States, is very different than if you're in the top 50%. So there again, there are corporations and businesses that have been born to attend to the low-income sector, and some do it very well, some do it badly. Some, you could say, are taking advantage of the low-income sectors, and some are addressing the needs of the low-income sectors. But what is interesting is that from a policy point of view, for the people that are in government or leading businesses, the reality of the lives of the lower 50% is not well understood. So we tend to condemn things that because we view them from the eyes of the top 50% and not from the eyes of the lower 50%.
Okay. So beside the model, the health business that you discovered in Mexico, what else can we do in Indonesia? A business that can impact, that can make a good impact for lower income people, that can be benefit also.
Well, many things are happening. And one of the great promises is, of course, the digital age. Internet and the fact that smartphones are in everybody's hands. And, you know, things like that are very Indonesian, like Gojek. And so all this is opening doors for low-income sectors to access opportunities and access goods and services. For example, today, that the penetration of smartphones that is so pervasive. So now in Indonesia, like the rest of the world, people are walking around the streets with smartphones that are computers that have much more power than computers in offices 20 years ago, in the hand of everybody.
Yes, yes.
And I think that will be one of the ways in which we can disseminate opportunities and disseminate information and knowledge for good and bad, right?
Yes.
Because this is a neutral vehicle.
Yes, yes.
We can send information about health,
Yes.
and we can send false news about politics.
Yes.
So,
Correct.
but it is a very powerful
Tools.
tool
Yeah.
that we need to make good use of, and bad people will make bad use of.
Yes, yes. You know, yesterday there's an election in Indonesia, right? And one of the candidates cannot accept the announcement,
Right.
and there are some small riots, and the government shut down the social media for 3 days, yeah, because
Right.
they keep spreading the bad news, the bad politics news. Yeah.
Yes, and we need, as a society, we need to learn how to deal with these new things, because, and it's happened all across the world, when all these things started new, it would seem like all a positive promise.
Yes.
But as the years went on, we know now that it can be a great source of knowledge, and it can be a great source of disinformation.
Yes.
Right.
In your countries, like in Latin America, is there any other projects like Gojek that is successful?
Oh well, there are many, because the course I teach,
Yes.
the focus of my teaching and research at Harvard Business School is all about commercial models
Yes.
aimed at what I call the base of the pyramid, the majority of the people.
Okay.
And so the world is full of great examples.
Oh, okay. What is your favorites? What are your favorites? Maybe you can.
Well, because I've been involved with microfinance, some of my favorites are microfinance, like BRI. They're great institutions. Compartamos Banco in Mexico, Mi Banco in Peru, Banco Sol in Bolivia. But in other areas, there are great examples. In Asia,
Yes.
you can look at, for example, a very controversial but difficult issue is water. The world is going to run out of drinkable water
Yes.
much earlier than it will run out of oil. So access to water is so key.
Yes.
As a doctor, you know that
Yes. Yes.
not only do we need water to live, but bad water is responsible for
Bad health.
all kinds of health
Disease.
problems. So one of the questions for society is, how do you make water available to the people? Because everybody needs it. So usually municipal systems are very challenged. And one of my examples is what happened in Manila, in the Philippines, in East Manila, where a company, Manila Water, participated in the privatization of the water distribution. And they are, in my eyes, an example of how, one of the few good examples of positive water privatization. So that Eastern Manila,
Yes.
in the space of 6-7 years, went from only 20% of the people having access to good water to 100%. And this is a commercial enterprise.
Okay.
And it's interesting because at the same time, Western Manila was privatized, and it didn't turn out that well. So this is a great example that you need to manage, and you need to have smart people and good management skills in order to make something work.
Yes.
But if you do it right, then it can benefit society.
Yes. Yes. Wow, that's a very good insight, yeah, for all the businesses. That is good. So, what is your last insights for Indonesian people about business that can make a good impact for low-income people?
Well, I think You know, Indonesia. I've been to Indonesia.
You've been?
Yeah, and I think it's a great, vibrant country.
Yes,
great
we have
potential.
a lot of resources actually.
Great resources.
Yes.
And it's been my privilege to have also Indonesian students in my courses. And they have returned to Indonesia.
Yes.
Even as we speak, they are engaged in business models that are really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully we all can work together, yeah, to make Indonesia to become better and have a higher income for all the majority of the people.
Yes,
Thank
I hope
you so
so.
much,
Thank you.
Professor Michael Chu,
It was
for
a pleasure.
today. It was a very great insight and very powerful thinking for us, so we can make the Indonesia to become a greater place and with a greater income. Thank you,
Thank
Professor.
you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for today.